Good evening. My name is Tim Corcoran. I'd like to thank the Wisconsin Board of Education for the opportunity to talk to you about what we can do to help out the school districts of Greenwood and Loyal, Wisconsin, and prepare them for future success. Both districts hired Roger Warner Associates for a joint organizational analysis study to find out their current cost effectiveness for their staffing, facilities, transportation, etc., and to make sure that there was a long-term solution for both districts. Because both districts have experienced student enrollment decline, budget reductions, staffing losses, etc., and that all affects or has an impact on the long-term quality of both organizations. Now, they went through this study by interviewing staff members, looking at the demographic data, enrollment trends, both past and future projections, and looking at their needs for current and future staffing, the status of their facilities, and looking at their curriculum offerings that they can give to their students. The joint study came up with a variety of conclusions, both positive and negative, for both school districts. Some of the negative things that they found were that they have experienced, will continue to experience a decline in student enrollment due to students and families choosing other schooling options, either parochial schools, open enrollment to neighboring districts, or homeschooling, as well as noticing declining birth rates, loss of businesses and employment and opportunities in both of the school district areas. Now, due to the student enrollment decline, staff budgets, district budgets, the programs and services that can be offered have all taken hits on that. And without any immediate measures taking place, that is going to continue to be the case for both organizations. Now, some positives is that they are both financially well-managed enterprises. They have a balanced general fund. They have a decent amount of balances in their general funds. They have excellent class sizes throughout both districts. They're able to offer a wide variety of classes for their students, both for regular and special education. And they found out many more similarities between the two districts as far as similar size, how they deliver their education to their students. Same 11 disciplines, similar to your English, math, social studies, science offerings are all in the same 11 disciplines. And they also really wanted to focus on that the administration seems to be highly cordial, and they have a great working relationship with their staff members. How can we make sure that the enrollment decline does not continue to be a trend? Well, we first need to make sure that our goal moving forward is that we can improve our collaboration between the communities of Greenwood and Loyal. We're going to do this by increasing collaboration without the needing for consolidating both districts into just one larger district. We're going to utilize the facility, staff, and programs that are already in place, but we're going to look at how we can be more cost effective through staffing, transportation, and with our facilities, etc. We're going to use the proximity of our districts of only being about 7 miles apart of the main Greenwood and Loyal cities, and eventually then investing in some facility modernization to attract new students to the area, as well as making sure that our students in the area stay in our schools instead of go to other schools nearby. Now, why do we have to make all of these changes? Well, because the current approach is not working. We have to make changes in order for both districts to still survive. Due to the student enrollment decline, both districts have a bleak future, even though they are financially well managed. The continued trend, though, just cannot support two different districts. So we're going to we'll keep focusing on the positives, but we do need to make some changes in order for both districts to survive. Since I'm recommending that the districts of Greenwood and Loyal continue to operate as separate organizations, there can be an argument put out there of why don't we consolidate both of those districts down to one? Now, some of the reasons why that this is not the best course of action is because that the cost saving benefits of bringing two districts down to one very rarely end up coming true. It can take a very long time for those cost benefits to materialize, and we don't have a lot of time. So we have to make changes now. And the recommendation is that consolidating from two districts to one would not give us that immediate cost saving benefit that we need for both to survive. And there are other things because trying to consolidate um, two separate districts to one would likely involve building, new schools to accommodate a larger class or larger student population. And right now, we're going to try to work on using what we have without the need for a significant cost in new construction. The first thing we're going to do to make sure Greenwood and Loyal can continue to operate as separate organizations is to increase the collaboration between the two districts. Currently, both districts share special education programming for students who need the special education services. Now, in the future, we're going to expand that into more of the general education offerings. This is going to start by having teachers, administrators, guidance counselors, coaches, etc., all have time built in through professional development days to make sure that they can collaborate together because there's no need to reinvent the wheel when staff are so close together. They can really work together to help each other out, and so that there don't have to be bigger drastic changes in the future. The second thing that we're going to do to make sure both Greenwood and Loyal can continue to operate as separate districts is to utilize the current resources already in place. The project consultants concluded that there were no major facility needs for the three schools in the districts combined. This way, we don't need to invest in a lot of financial capital into building new resources for our students. We know that both districts are both financially well organized, so we can use that to our advantage to use the money that we already have available. And then another positive thing is, we have really good administration throughout both the districts. When we have good leaders at the top, that trickle effect is going to happen, and we don't want to interrupt all of the good things happening throughout our districts. Another way that we're going to make sure Greenwood and Loyal can continue to operate as separate organizations is to look at the cost effectiveness for classes, for staffing, and for transportation for each district. If we look at the option to increase some technology use throughout both districts, we can have classes offered for the students even though they may not attend that district. So we can have a student in Loyal attend a class offered in Greenwood through some video conferencing, so that way they can take that class without ever having to be transported over there. This would also help address some staffing issues. Instead of having to hire a staff member to teach a smaller class at Greenwood and Loyal, they can have it at the same time instead of having to hire two different teachers for those two different classes. Do it all through video conferencing, and they can just have the one teacher teach students from both districts. Another thing to focus on is to look at the cost of transportation for both districts. Respectively, they pay on average $127 and $287 more per student than the state average when it comes to transportation. Now, each district has to bid out to a private company to have their transportation needs met. Warner, the Warner and Warner study recommended that they bid it together so that they can likely see some cost improvement through that, and it'll save both districts in the long run. Action step number 4 is going to tie in with our first one of collaborating because we're going to use the proximity between the two towns as a benefit. Now we know that the town of Greenwood and Loyal are only approximately 7 miles from one another. And there's also many other communities nearby. Now, each one of these towns has resources available, either through athletic fields, uses in different community education, offerings for the public as well, adults, for students, senior citizens. Everything should be able to be used collaboratively, and with the close proximity for all of these towns, it should make it easier instead of having to build and spend a lot of money to incorporate these in each individual town that are near each other. The last action step we'll talk about is facility modernization. Now, even though the studies showed that there was not any major needs for either district as far as facilities can be, we still have some things that we can address. Some of the comments in the study were that the classrooms were of varying sizes, there was lack of office spaces in some of the schools, and that there were just some unappealing areas in the cafeterias and etc. Now, when we are talking about updating these, we're not saying that it has to be the best of the best, but we would like to modernize some of these areas in each of the schools. Now, this includes putting in like a sprinkler system because one of the schools didn't have a sprinkler system to help with fire safety, and also having secure entrances for all of the schools. Uh, Another area to address is the traffic flow in and out of the schools, making sure things are a one way instead of having cars drive in both directions on school grounds. Just helps with safety of students who are walking home, and just makes it easier for pickup in that time to, or parent drop off or student drop off, and pick up much more efficient. Now, if students from neighboring districts see that Loyal and Greenwood are putting some money into updating their schools, that could draw them in to kind of, uh, you know, join the district and take classes and be students of a school that has some little more modern flair to what they have in their own district. It would also go a long ways into keeping students in the district instead of losing those out and continuing the enrollment decline that we've experienced so far. Now, the study showed that we need to make changes immediately to make sure that there is a future for both of our districts. So starting right away in the 2006-2007 school year, we're going to start implementing action steps 1 through 4 and part of action step 5. So we're going to increase our collaboration between the two schools, between the two school districts. We're going to look at our current resources and continue to use everything that we have already in place. Now we can implement some cost saving strategies with our staffing, with our courses offering, and with transportation. And we're going to look at the resources that we have available in our towns and towns, neighboring school districts, to see what else we can use instead of having to put the money towards building new facilities. And then looking at what we're going to need to do to make sure that we can modernize the 3 schools in the 2 districts here. So during the school year, we're going to implement those action steps, and then towards the end of the year, we got to assess of how well we're doing. This will then determine the next steps of what we need to do to make sure that we're continuing to move in the right direction. Now, if it's determined that we're going to have to put more money than we have available, we're going to have to start getting information ready with community involvement to make sure that we have all of the stakeholders on the same page as far as it comes to needing maybe a bond referendum to be passed in order to have funds available for 2 schools. Now, after the summer 2007 and moving forward, we're going to continue to use the cost saving strategies that we've highlighted before us, and then looking at what we can do as far as construction and remodeling to make sure that our schools are being modernized. Now, moving forward without consolidating is going to take a great amount of communication between all stakeholders throughout the communities. We've got to focus on the positives of what this can do for both communities and make sure that the sooner that we make these changes, the cheaper that it's actually going to be for all of us. cost is always a top factor when dealing with big changes throughout different districts. And the sooner we can do these, the cheaper it's going to be for everybody. Thank you for letting me share my recommendations. Do you have any questions?